Good evening. Welcome to Cinema Hits and Misses. I'm Dawn.
I'm John.
And I'm Ryan.
You tuned in to WMPG 90.9 FM. And tonight we've got two films for you. We've got
Detroit.
And The Dark Tower, so we got the D's today.
and if you've seen either one of these, you want to join us in the conversation, it's 780-4909. That's 780-4909. We're here 8 to 8:30. And I think Ryan's going to kick it off with Detroit.
All right. During the summer of 1967 in Detroit, race relations between the African American community and the police are at an all-time high. Riots have broken out and the city is in shambles. The National Guard has been brought in to help control the chaos. Detroit is now a war zone. We focus on many different people whose storylines converge to the Algiers Hotel, which left 3 black men dead and the beating of 9 others, 7 black men and 2 white girls, by the hands of the police. Melvin Dismukes, played by John Boyega, is a security guard who heads over with the National Guard when gunshots are heard coming from the hotel. There, they find the Detroit police officers with 11 people lined up in the hotel's hallway who have already been beaten. Melvin looks in a room and to find a dead black man lying on the ground. One of the officers, Krause, played by Will Poulter, explains that they were looking for a sniper, but none of the people lined up know what he's talking about. Tensions soon rise as Krause begins to take control of the situation by threatening the group in order to get information he wants, even if there's no shooter to be found. Detroit is directed by Catherine Bigelow and is written by Mark Bowl. So guys, what did you guys think about Detroit?
Speechless, I guess.
Well, it is. Much like this creative duo of Bigelow and Bowl did for Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, this is a series of snapshots of events that happened, and it's very, very good, but very fatiguing.
Yeah. John, what do you think?
No, I absolutely agree with you, Don. Really more so in the second act where it feels like you're there. I feel like I had a similar feeling with Dunkirk as well, in the sense I felt like it was just in that moment, and it's so horrifying. And I've heard a lot of comparisons being made as a horror film, even though,
Right.
I mean, it's more thriller elements for sure, but it's so tense, and you're just shaking in your seat the whole time. You're so uncomfortable. Ryan, what'd you think?
Yeah, I definitely felt the tension, like you said, in the second act. I think compared to, because I'm a big fan of Bigelow's other 2 films, The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. I think the beginning, it starts off differently than the other 2 films, because we get this nice artwork of the Great Migration after the with the migration of African Americans up to Chicago and Detroit, and it's all done with really nice paintings. I think it isn't until after that into the second act where you get the tension really pulls you in, because I think Zero Dark 30, the opening of the phone calls on 9/11, that just pulls you in, and you're like, this is hard to handle. But definitely the second act in the Algiers Hotel, especially with Will Poulter, who I love him so much, but his roles that he's taken, I know in Maze Runner, you hate him so much, but that's the point, and he's doing a good job if you hate him. And this one, he is a monster, and he pulls it off so well.
That's why I want to pull out We're the Millers and
Yes.
be in comedy again. But yeah, I knew threads of this, so having the historical overview, I think, helps ground the audience if you're not familiar with it. I mean, in 1967, over a 4-day period, there were 43 lives claimed, more than 1,100 people injured, and 7,000 arrests. So this is a large scope, and to have that large of a scope told within about a 2-hour time frame, it's difficult. And I think Bigelow and Bowl did well to compact it. But again, like both John and Ryan have said, when you get to that second part after the introduction, you're introduced to these different sets of characters and how they come together in that second act, you get pummeled with this. This is a civil war film.
Yeah, I think I know John's mentioned the title. what's interesting is that the first portion of the film is set up, or like lays the groundwork and gives you the background. But John, you I know we've talked about the title.
Yeah, and I think it's more of like a nitpick because it really a majority of the movie really hones in about the Algiers motel case, and I thought going in it was just going to be about the riots in general and how I don't know there'd be like pieces here and there, but I mean either way I think the name's fine. it's just a nitpick I think. Because it makes it seem like the scope's a lot bigger, but I mean, you need to have that beginning to set it up. So then, when you get to the second act, you understand the circumstances of which these characters, or which the people that lived there, at the time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, at that time period, you pretty much use any industrialized city, whether it's New York or Boston or Detroit. Any of these cities where parts of the population were funneled into smaller and tighter areas where they could actually live.
Yeah.
When you have so much humanity in a small spot and the population who have the broader expanse kind of overseeing that smaller population, the smaller area, the tensions are there.
Yeah.
And, so this was a powder keg wherever it was going to be. And in Detroit, with that setup of the after hours club and the kind of the missteps that happened there,
Yeah, and they do a really good job at showing both sides, whatever's trying to tread. They show both sides of the police and the African American community, and what I thought, this was a smaller thing, but I'm glad they showed kind of the cultural side of Detroit, because I'm a sucker for Motown. So it was very nice, like, even though it's a small part of the movie, it was nice to have that, since Motown is a very huge part of Detroit. The talents that they had for the band, the Dramatics, those, oh man, they can, like, the people that they can sing.
Yeah, I mean, Algie Smith as Larry, the lead singer, and Jacob Lattimore as Fred, the kind of promoter-ish, best friend. Those two together, and there's a very poignant scene where Larry is on. They're getting ready to perform. The performance is canceled, and Larry goes out into an empty theater and does this. I mean, not giving anything away here. It's just a slice of emotion that took place during this time.
Yeah.
And this time that we're talking about in the movie is Detroit, set in 1967, Detroit, Michigan, during the riots. And if you've seen this or our next movie, The Dark Tower, give us a call, 780-4909, 780-4909.
I thought that scene like showed how it's just how the riots themselves affected, every aspect of it, whereas, some people were just trying to be, have a good time. It's just, there's these riots looming in the background, and they're kind of hard to ignore, and for their safety, they have to leave. I think, though, I'm going to do a little bit of some criticisms.
Sure.
I think there's a lot to like about this movie. It's a heavy movie for sure. I think, though, I thought the third act didn't really stand up in comparison to the rest of the film. I think it's just because, like, I knew exactly where it's going, and I felt like you could have rushed that through. It was a lot of, like, court cases, like, courtroom scenes, and John Krasinski shows up, which threw me off at first, because I don't see him in many roles. I mean, I guess the last thing was 13 Hours, but I guess that didn't seem as jarring. It was just all of a sudden, oh, hi, John Krasinski. Jim, what are you doing here? Like, that's what I thought. But, I thought those courtroom scenes, like, we could have rushed it along. I knew exactly where it was going. I don't know how you two feel about that, but...
Well, I think it was there to give a sense of a resolution, not necessarily the resolution that audiences and the plaintiffs would have wanted. And you know that part of this was based on happenings, and some of it was filled in by personal accounts that weren't quite accounted for, and supposedly some of this, as visceral and hard as it was for us to watch, was even worse living through.
Yeah.
And they didn't quite go to those depths.
Yeah, so what was really nice, this doesn't spoil anything, that they mentioned at the end of the credits that, as you mentioned, they had to fill in the gaps, which was really nice that John and I had talked about that. I'm glad they put it at the end of the film, because if they put it at the beginning of the film, it would have, like, kind of not alleviated a lot of the stuff, but it would have been like, okay, so some of this isn't real, but at least doing it at the end, you're like, you've gone through it enough that you're like, just it gives you a moment to breathe. I think the ending, I knew John Krasinski was in it. I was waiting to see him because I'd saw his name in the credits, so it wasn't too jarring. I thought it was like Don said, the resolution, even though many people may not like it, it reminded me of like the ending of The Big Short, where you just see this whole thing and you're like, please, okay, well this happened, but I think the movie's structured into 3 parts. That you have the setup of Detroit, you have the Algiers motel incident, and then you have the courtroom case. So I think I was fine. There definitely is pacing issues. It is a long movie. It's like 2.5 hours. I was waiting because you don't know how in depth Bigelow's gonna go. Like, if it's only gonna be like 45 minutes of this whole scene, and then like you don't know how like they would resolve this sequence that only a certain amount of people experienced. So I think that one was like, okay, come on, like get to like the ending, because it's also super tense. They're like, can you finish this right now? And
Right, and you know, it was almost, you were feeling the abuse that this group of patrons at the Algiers Hotel was going through, and I get why they kept with it, because you see a shift in responsibility or people stepping away from responsibility, but I think that it really drove it too far home for me. I could have gotten the same effect with a shorter time frame on it, I think.
And because I know we have to go to the next. I think the other support, like we mentioned, Will Poulter, but Jason Boyega, the entire cast.
Jason Boyega,
he was amazing.
Stellar.
And
John Boyega was.
And
was
John,
great.
Yeah.
Like Anthony Mackie was great.
Really all around. Like I don't think there's really a performance that threw me off at all. I don't know how you two feel.
Jason Mitchell was awesome.
And, you know, 3 of these actors are from the UK.
Yeah.
Spotless.
Yeah.
Spotless accents.
I feel bad for Will Poulter because he always gets thrown an American role, and there's only like a few times I've heard him with American accent. I think one of them was like the Narnia movie, and that was like when he was like 12.
Yeah.
But Jason Mitchell, it was nice to see him because he was in Straight Outta Compton.
You know, and you could feel, I mean, they were part of what escalated the incident was someone blowing off steam.
Yes.
And, you know, in any other time or situation, that wouldn't have
caused
this event to happen. And, you know, again, we're not going to say exactly what happened. You can find out, or, you know, it's out there in the public, and, you know, if you choose to go to this, you'll want to have that element of surprise of what happens. And, you know, I think this is definitely a movie to see.
Yes.
You know, is it a rush out and see it in a theater? You get enveloped in it.
Yeah,
I think
it's a very important movie too. Yeah. I think because a lot of the stuff, like I've seen interviews, because I didn't know anything about it, and I think it sheds a light in a part of American history that a lot of people might not be familiar with.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think it's absolutely something worth seeing. Whether or not you want to see it in the theaters is up to you. It's not going to be one of those we're going to have a good time going to the movies kind of thing. It's like a lot of people have talked about this. It's like it's an Oscar hitter like already in August, which is, I mean, and there's already really 2 movies that have been like in discussion for that. But and I think so. Detroit's absolutely worth seeing at some point. But it's up to you.
And I think they did well to keep it as apolitical as possible. I mean, you can tell there might be a certain portrayal that would lead you one way or the other of how you feel on this, but for the most part, very very down, straight down the road,
Very objective.
And if you're used to Bigelow's style of
Yes.
filming, it's handheld, it's jarring. So much like Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, you're going to get a lot of that motion with the camera. So again, if that's not your thing on a big screen, just be aware that it's there. And it does lead to the immediacy of the story, I think.
It's not Paul Greengrass bad, but it does get shaky. All right.
Is anything else for Detroit?
I think we covered everything.
All right. How about we go to The Dark Tower?
I'll tell you, this summary was tough to write. So, let's get started. We open to a world we have never seen before. We see a man in black clothing trying to destroy a tower. We're not the only ones seeing these events, as they are the nightmares of a young boy named Jake. He's been having these nightmares for the past year. Everyone around Jake, including his mother and stepfather, don't believe the nightmares and think they're some sort of trauma which were caused by his father's death, which happened a year before. It turns out those nightmares are real. Through a series of events, Jake finds himself in Midworld and meets a new mysterious figure known as the Gunslinger. The Gunslinger is also looking for the man in black, and so the two explore Midworld. Now, The Dark Tower is directed by Nikolaj Arcel, stars Idris Elba, Matthew McConaughey, and Tom Taylor. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it has 18% and 61% of audiences liked it. So, what did you two think of The Dark Tower?
I'm more in the audience rating than the critics rating, but it's not a perfect movie at all.
No. It's weird. I wasn't excited to see it. I was intrigued to see it because the trailers didn't grab me. But I was interested because it's Stephen King. I didn't read the series. For those who have read the series, I believe this is it's nothing like the books. It's hard because it was fine. One of the positives it reminded me of the 80s fantasy movies like The Never-Ending Story, where you have like a kid that's just thrown into this world that's huge and like they could explore, except he didn't get to like explore a lot of it. I'm glad that we get to see more than I thought, because I was worried. It takes place in New York City and Midworld, and I thought a majority of it was going to be in New York City, and we wouldn't get to see enough of Midworld. I wasn't happy with the amount that we saw, but it was more than I expected. John?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm more on the critics' side, probably. I mean, Ryan, you hit a lot of points. Like, I don't feel like we got enough of Midworld. This runtime is under an hour and a half, and really that summary I feel like gave away like a good half hour, because it takes a while to really get things going, and there's a lot of things that have to be explained. There's a lot of like terminology for Midworld that has to be explained, and like who these characters are, like the Man in Black and the Gunslinger, and what their importance are.
Skinwalkers.
Yeah.
And those people too.
That's what they're called? Okay, I didn't know what they were called.
I thought they were just people who just happened to have...
Double-skinned people, okay.
I'm learning new things every day.
Yeah.
This movie to me felt more like a prologue than it did a full movie, and like I thought the final act really cemented that, which is like, oh, we're just gonna wrap this up real quick, and here we go. Next movie, everyone. Like,
yeah, a lot of times I'll complain about that for a sequel. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, this is a device point to get me between the movie that I liked and the movie that I hope to see. And, to start that out with the launching of a tent pole is not great.
Yeah.
But I didn't hate it as much as it's getting hated for. I mean, I read the first couple books. I didn't stay with the series.
Yep.
And for me, it was like, once I knew that Idris Elba was going to be the Gunslinger, I was like, oh, okay. And from Entertainment Weekly, I grabbed this little thing. It says, "We found the perfect gunslinger. Won't someone please build him a better tower?" And I guess that was my frustration, because it was like, okay, McConaughey, we know he can be better, but it's like, okay, is it the writing? And then I'm like, all right, so Nikolaj Arcel also wrote my favorite version of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Oh, he wrote
movie.
the original one?
The Danish version. So I'm like, it's something there. So what was the thing? And I have to admit, for the most part, the most fun I had was the breadcrumbs of Stephen King's other
That was my favorite
worlds.
part too. That was great.
And, that shouldn't be the reason to sit through the
Yeah.
movie, but, seeing the different nods to other movies, other books and characters was fun.
Yeah, because it's not like a giant spoiler, but with some of Stephen King's movies or books are somewhat connected to the Dark Tower. So like you said, the breadcrumbs, there was a bunch that was like, cool. Wish you could go deeper. And like with that, there's also like copyright issues in studio. So like they might not be able to go in, but yeah, it was nice to see those. I think the boy who plays Jake, he did an excellent job. Like he did a really good performance. There's one part I know John and I talked about that you could tell when they did reshoots when he was a foot taller and his voice dropped in one scene, and I'm like, where?
It was funny to watch.
Yeah.
And if you're just tuning in to Cinema Hits and Misses, it's Dawn, Ryan, and John here with The Dark Tower. We're here till 8:30 at 780-4909. That's 780-4909.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, we've covered a lot of things, and this, granted, like, I don't hate this movie. I think like The Dinner is much worse than that. Like
yes.
that's
There's a lot worse
that's
movies
Ryan
than
and
this.
I's low so far for the year, but we're not going to harp back on that again. But the thing is there's several movies like this year or this summer like where I feel like I'm not excited. And
it's
I
kinda
wasn't
meh.
bored, but I wasn't excited either. It was just
Yeah.
kind of like left in the middle, just like, okay.
And so it's the question. You can be overwhelmed and underwhelmed. Can you just be whelmed?
Yeah.
And this is
Perfect summary.
I'm whelmed.
Yeah, it's
You know.
like if I'm trying to think what it's coming this. Actually, I think like what's coming out this weekend. I guess if you've already seen like Wonder Woman and Spider-Man and Dunkirk, and because Detroit's a heavy movie, so if you wanted to see like a movie that you can just sit there for less than an hour and a half and just be entertained at some points, go check it out. Out of the Stephen King movies that are coming out this year, I'm more excited for It, because I think that one's definitely gonna be hopefully well crafted than this, just because Stephen King movies are they're either really amazing, like The Shining, or a little iffy. I haven't seen a lot of them, but like I know
I'll see.
yeah.
Mine is my Stephen King benchmark is Mick Garris's The Stand.
Yep.
But even with it coming out,
Yep.
from what I'm hearing, it's not the child adult version. It's
Yeah. The child
children's
first,
version.
and then if it does well, they kind of want to do a sequel.
But Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise
Yes.
looks amazing.
Yes.
And, I think I'm with you, Ryan. I was excited to see this because I thought Elba and McConaughey would be great together, and I think they have the charisma, but it had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So that disappointed me. But again, I think it's okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a bad movie. It's not a great movie. If it was a lower budget movie, I think it would be better, because we don't get a lot of those like medium budget movies anymore, and I think that would have been like, it's an okay movie and it didn't cost that much, but this cost a lot of money, and so
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it to most people. You can absolutely wait on this. Or really, I don't know. Like it only made like 19 million,
Yeah.
which is, and that's, I don't know how much of its budget that is, but I mean, I don't think it's gonna, I know they've had plans, like they want to do like a TV show and a sequel, but I mean, if you just show us the prologue and not provide much like more context and don't show us the grand scope of Midworld, I'm not really excited for this. I don't really want to see the sequel either. Like nothing's really drawing me back in.
I think the best option would be if a channel like HBO or AMC or some bought the rights to the movie, played the movie one night, and then had a TV show called The Dark Tower. And of course, Idris Elba, Matthew McConaughey, even though they do have TV show history, I don't think they would do it. But I mean, I would.
Elba supposedly signed on for some kind of bookend.
Okay, so I would like to
about
see
the younger Roland.
Yeah, so I'd if they do that, then I would go see it just to get the bookend, I think.
And so that's tough. I mean, yeah, looking at what's at theaters, it's get away, because it's going to be kind of a mixed weekend. So
Yeah.
if you want to get out to a theater, I mean, there's a lot out there to see. And we know that Gail and Terry will be talking about a few, especially probably Glass Castle.
Yeah, there's several. So coming out this weekend. So you mentioned Glass Castle. At the Nick, they'll be playing an Inconvenient sequel, which is obviously a sequel to An Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah, and there's an indie film, Maudie.
Yep, that's been showing.
Currently
Yeah.
at the Nick as well. I believe for any horror
Annabelle.
fans, Annabelle Creation. Though I haven't seen any of the Conjuring movies, so that's gonna be interesting. Like trying to approach that.
It's a prequel to like the other prequel. So
Prequel to the spin-off
Yeah, so-
of a movie. Yeah,
yeah.
that
Well-
seems like a good plan.
Well, and the interesting thing about Annabelle, for me, it on the screen it shows an articulated doll. The actual Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann that's kept under glass. But while I was doing some backstory, someone was asking me a question about it, and I looked to the Warren Museum. And actually, this weekend, if you're willing to go to Connecticut, they are having a meet and greet with Lorraine Warren, and Annabelle and a couple of other haunted items will be there. And you have to sign
Okay.
this disclaimer that you don't hold them liable. And I'm like, while I would love to see Lorraine Warren, there's no way I'm going to be in the room with that doll. I don't care. I don't care what you think. It's no.
Yep.
But yeah, so for Detroit, I think we all agree that it's an
excellent
see
movie.
it.
Yes.
It's great.
Whether or not you see it in a theater, that would be up to you. Mixed on Dark Tower.
Dark Tower you can miss.
Yeah.
There's not much happening there.
Yeah.
Unless you're interested in a prologue.
If you like Stephen King, but you didn't read the books, but you like Stephen King,
You
maybe
just,
check it
if
out.
you just want to like check up on like what all the term like all the vocab words are for Midworld, you'll have yourself covered by the end. Like I know what these words mean now for the sequel, so you can get ready for the
whenever
whenever
they
that
do.
will happen.
And as John and Ryan mentioned, if you do want to see a movie that we don't consider that great, The Dinner, it's now out on DVD.
Oh my God.
So
no,
you can
no,
watch
no.
it at home. But in the meantime, we're rounding down to the 8:30 half hour. And it's time for Between the Notes with Justine.